This is Anatomy Physiology lesson 9.04 on the small intestine. So if you want a color code, go ahead and pause the video and do that now. All right, hopefully you have everything colored according to the way you wanted it. Let's go over labels first, and then we'll talk about what these things are. To start off with, in the last video, when on the stomach, we said that this is the pyloric sphincter. That controls the flow of, one of the things I forgot in the last video was we forgot to talk about something called chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. When food comes into the stomach and it mixes with the gastric juices, which include hydrochloric acid and pepsin and mucus, it creates this substance called chyme, and that's what leaves the stomach and enters into the small intestine. So chyme is a mixture of food and gastric juices. We just call all that stuff in the stomach gastric juices, and it's paste-like. So it's like a thick toothpaste. So that comes into the small intestine. The small intestine has two functions. In the upper part of the small intestine, we have digestion. And in the lower part, the mid to lower part, we have absorption of nutrients. So those are the two functions. We're not going to talk about the large intestine, but that's what we have here. And we're not going to talk about the appendix, but let's just note that this is the appendix. So we'll talk about those in the next video. So what we will be talking about is the small intestine, and the first portion is in orange, the second portion is in this light blue, and the third portion is in purple. So the first portion we labeled in the last video, and that's called the duodenum, D-U-O-D-E-N-U-M. The middle portion that's in light blue is called the jejunum, J-E-J-U-N-U-M. And just like everything else in this region, iliac crest, the iliac region, this is the ileum, I-L-I-E-U-M. All right, so let's talk about why we have different regions and what's going on. One thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to sketch in I'm just going to use pencil here. I'm going to kind of do a teardrop shape. This is a pancreas, and I'm just doing this in pencil so that I can write over top of it. And then up here, I'd like you to pencil in kind of dotted lines, the liver. I'm going off screen, but that's okay. So I've got the liver, and I've got the pancreas. I just want those very P-A-N-C-R-E-A-S. I want those faint so that we can kind of just get an idea. But what I want to do is I want to talk about how we're feeding things into the duodenum. So the duodenum, you'll notice that we did amylase in the mouth for carbs. We had pepsin in the stomach, along with other some various other enzymes that I didn't necessarily talk about. But we haven't started digesting fats yet. So what's going on? We need fats. So the duodenum, we still have more digestion, including fats. So let's just put a couple of different. The duodenum is about 12 inches long. So it's the shortest of all of them. And in fact, I think that's what it translates to, something like 10 fingers. That's about how long it is. And we have some ducts that come in. I'm going to do the ducks in, let's say, I already did orange. Let's do the ducks in pink. So there's a duct that comes down from the, let's see, how do I draw this? Comes up from the head of the pancreas and it enters in here. And this is where they join. Now this isn't to scale. So this is the duct coming down from the liver. And off of this duct, we've got here off to the side, we've got the gallbladder. No, I almost forgot too about this structure. So this structure is called the mesentery. mesentery. And the mesentery is a membrane that helps support and hold together the intestines. The small intestine. And you saw this in the cats. When we had the longest intestine contest, you had to pull apart and cut this mesentery because that was holding everything together. So what happens is we have chyme that comes out of the stomach and it comes into the duodenum. And this green substance, it gets produced here, is called bile. So this is bile. And it joins with the substances coming out of the pancreas. And we get a common duct here. So we get a joining here. The two ducts join. And then they dump everything into the duodenum. So this duct comes over, this duct comes up, they join, they form a common bile duct, and it all gets dumped into the duodenum. So we've got a couple of different substances we want to talk about here. Coming from the liver, so bile gets produced by the liver. And it does something called emulsify. It emulsifies. Emulsification means you take a fat and you're able to mix it with water. So without this emulsification, it's difficult to get the fat to mix with the things that you need it to mix with in order to break it down. So if you have your gallbladder removed, you have, let's say, gallstones, for example, it can be really difficult to digest fats. You have to watch your diet. I'm going to do the notes on the pancreas over here. So let's say this, let me kind of make the pancreas pink. And I want to talk about the enzymes that are released by the pancreas. So we have trypsin and lipase. Lipase breaks down fats. And trypsin, is it TRIP or TRYP? It might be YP, breaks down proteins. The other thing that the pancreas sends into the duodenum is sodium bicarbonate. And maybe you've heard of this before. It's what's in, oh gosh, the fizzy drops that you put in Alka-Seltzer. Sodium bicarbonate is in Alka-Seltzer. Well, why do you take Alka-Seltzer? If you have an upset stomach, you have heartburn, and you need to dial back your stomach acid, Sodium bicarbonate neutralizes stomach acid. Why would we need to neutralize stomach acid here? The chyme that's coming out of the stomach is chock full of hydrochloric acid. And if we leave that in the duodenum, it'll actually dissolve that mucus lining of the duodenum. It also has mucus lining. And so that's a problem. We don't want that. So we get the sodium bicarbonate, and this neutralizes the hydrochloric acid, HCl. We get trypsin and lipase that do, and when we say breakdown, we're talking about digestion. So we've got digestion, and this is kind of a side point. By the time we get to the end of the duodenum, we're pretty much done digesting. So at this point, digestion's done, and we start to do nutrient absorption. In the jejunum. I'm going to bring this down a bit. And conversely, so we grab probably, I'd say, 70 to 80% of our nutrients here. The ileum has some absorption. And also here we have a lot of immune function. And we talked about that way back at the beginning of the year. You have those Peyer's patches, which are little patches of tonsillar tissue that have lymphocytes in them. So finally, then, we get to the end of the small intestine, and we have a valve here. This is called the it's in black, ileocecal valve, named from the ileum, and we're going to see that this part of the large intestine is called the cecum. It's called the cecum. So it's the ileocecal valve, and it's another sphincter. It helps us control the flow of substances from the small intestine to the large intestine. I'm going to do a better job. I want to redraw that. I'm going to grab just a ballpoint pen here. And I want to kind of try to redraw that. So this is the bile duct. So we get the bile duct coming in. And we get the duct from the pancreas. So this is the pancreatic duct. And if this is the duodenum. You get this bile duct flows into the pancreatic duct. They meet and they form what's called the common bile duct. So I tried to draw that up here. It didn't. I don't know that it really translated. But everything from the gallbladder, and there's other digestive enzymes. So the liver produces other digestive enzymes. The pancreas produces other digestive enzymes. But I just highlighted the big ones. Now that pancreatic duct runs down the middle of the pancreas. And one of the disorders I want to talk about here is pancreatitis. So actually, you know what? We're going to do pancreatitis when we do pancreas. So I'm going to save that. I'm just going to X that out. And I'm going to so the disorder we're going to talk about here is Crohn's disease. So I'm just going to go to black. CROHN, Crohn's disease. And we talked back a few chapters ago about autoimmune. This is actually an autoimmune disease. What happens is your immune system begins to attack the cells in your small intestine. And so this attack creates inflammation, and the inflammation can first of all, it's horribly painful. It's very, very painful. So we have chronic inflammation. And sometimes the inflammation can go on so long that you can have tissue death. And you can have areas of the small intestine that actually die and have to be cut out. When you cut out a portion of tissue, you call that resected. It has to be resected. The treatment for this is to give immune suppressing drugs, but sometimes those immune suppressing drugs, one of the side effects is a type of cancer called lymphoma. That's a cancer of your immune system. And so sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. So you really do have to be careful. If you have Crohn's disease, if you're choosing what you call treatment, that can also be mitigated with diet, changing the way that you eat. But it's a kind of a big issue for some folks. And again, anything in the stomach and the intestines is very painful. You have a lot of nerves. In fact, there's a division of the nervous system. We're not going to discuss this in the nervous system, but all the nerves that deal with your intestines and stomach is called the enteric nervous system. And this nervous system has its own division. Now, one of the things we didn't talk about was the lining of the intestines and how does this absorption take place. The large intestine video is super, super short. So I'm just going to put tissue in with the next video, and we'll do large intestine in the next video. So what are our takeaways here? We learned the parts of the small intestine, the duodenum, the jejunum, the ileum, ileocecal valve, mesentery. We saw that we have digestion continuing to take place in the duodenum. We get stuff that's dumped into that common bile duct from the pancreas and the gallbladder. Bile from the gallbladder emulsifies fat. Substances from the pancreas like trypsin and lipase break down fats, break down protein, and the sodium bicarbonate neutralizes the hydrochloric. Then we get absorption, and we'll talk more about that in the next video, in the jejunum and the ileum. And the disease that we're associating with small intestine was Crohn's disease. All right, that'll finish up the small intestine. See you in the next one.